Judas Priest is one of the most recognizable heavy metal patriarchs of all time, and also one of the oldest. This group, over the course of 45 plus years, has sold 45 plus million records, has released 17 studio albums, and has plans to release their 18th in early 2017. Try saying that last line 3 times fast. Just go ahead and try it. It's not easy. But over the course of all of these years, and all of the bands that they have influenced, there's also, no doubt, a number of skeletons about the band that a lot of people do not know. A lot of things that old fans, or even new fans, probably don't even realize about the group. So before we tackle the Judas Priest discography album by album over the course of the summer of 2016, as well as the fall leading up to the release of their brand new album, let's take a look at some things that you may not know about Judas Priest. So here are 5 things you may not know about Judas Priest, and we start with number 5, and it's the fact that Judas Priest formed in 1969. That's right, they could actually be 50 as a band in 2019. It's amazing. It actually makes them be almost as old as Black Sabbath, but not quite. But they have the opportunity to be around as a band longer than Black Sabbath, considering Sabbath is planning to end their touring schedule and perhaps end the band at the end of 2016. But yes, a lot of people are going to look on the Wikipedia and say, well, how is that possible considering Rock'n'Rolla wasn't released until 1974? What did they do for 5 years? Well, you have to kind of gig and, get a reputation and, get signed to a deal. And this was a Judas Priest that didn't feature some of the same names and same faces that you are really familiar with and have been familiar with since albums such as Rock'n'Rolla. Yeah, this is one that had a different lineup, one of which did not survive to the release of their first record. However, at one point had the eye of Tony Iommi's management in 1971, which would have potentially led them to a record deal. However, that fell through. But wait a minute, we just said something very interesting. None of this original lineup survived to 1974? So Rob Halford wasn't a member of this band since 1969, since its inception? Nope. Number 4, Rob Halford was not the original singer. Their original singer was a gentleman by the name of Al Atkins, and this is a gentleman who had to cut his hair and get a 9-to-5 job in 1973, considering he had a wife and a brand new daughter, and the band essentially at that point felt like it was going nowhere. Like, if we're not going to get a deal, they were just gigging around for some minimal money. However, it didn't seem like Judas Priest was primed to explode. Of course, hindsight being 2020, I'm sure he wished that he would have not made the decision that he did. However, based around that, Rob Halford became the singer of the band, considering he was dating one of the sisters of one of the other members. I believe it was either KK or Glenn. My knowledge is sometimes a little wonky in my head, but based off of that, he's been the lead singer of the group effectively ever since, with the exception of his departure from the band in the 1990s. So what about Al Atkins? Did Al Atkins have a career in music after his departure from Judas Priest? He actually kind of has. He's released 12 albums total, most of them under a solo moniker, and a lot of these albums also contain some old Judas Priest material, so it does showcase that there is still a bit of a relationship between them and the band. Brings us to number 3, and that's the fact that British Steel brought the phrase heavy metal into mainstream light. Now, there's going to be a lot of different documented cases and big-time arguments that state that the phrase heavy metal had been uttered since prior to Black Sabbath, or it was because of Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath. But the reality of it is that the emergence of British Steel as a bona fide hit as far as an album was concerned, it was a hit over in the UK and became a hit over across the pond in America, started to coin the phrase heavy metal in the mainstream light, as opposed to it just being done in smaller circles that were looking to perhaps add exposure to what this new style of music was all about. So heavy metal potentially did not have its brand name for roughly about 12 to 14 years after the release of the first Black Sabbath record, which everybody calls the first heavy metal record, even though there were shimmers of it prior to Sabbath's first release. Yeah, it's definitely a bit of confusing history, but this is one where the term heavy metal also has a great deal of meaning to Judas Priest, considering whenever some of the members were growing up, there were some factors that were around, and literally the idea of there being heavy metal or molten metal was literally everywhere. So it was kind of only right that the music that we now know and love as heavy metal has its roots and origins in the actual industry that's really coined the term of heavy metal. So, interesting little factoid there. Definitely still going to spawn some debate points, but hey, them's the breaks. Number 2, Judas Priest's new guitarist Richie Faulkner links them to Iron Maiden. It's the link that everybody hoped that one day would happen, and it finally has. Of course, then you'll have some smartass say, oh yeah, well, Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford were together on the song The One That You Love to Hate, which was on one of Rob Halford's solo albums. Well, it's one of Rob Halford's solo albums. It's not, actual Judas Priest or Iron Maiden. So shut up. But anyway, Richie Faulkner is the gentleman that has replaced K.K. Downing in Judas Priest. He was on their last record, and he will be, of course, on the next one. However, he does have links to Iron Maiden through, actually, Steve Harris's daughter, Lauren Harris. Richie Faulkner was the touring guitarist for Lauren Harris's project, and so that does give them a unique little link there. So if you ever wondered if the two new wave of British heavy metal giants ever had some sort of crossbreed reaction, outside of touring, some way that we could 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon this shit together, well, there is actually one, and it's through Richie Faulkner, the most recent member of Judas Priest. It's amazing, isn't it? And that brings us to number 1, and that's the film Rockstar was meant to be about the life of Tim "Ripper" Owens. Yes, so the number 1 thing that people may not know doesn't even involve a typical member of the band. Ripper Owens, the man that replaced Rob Halford in the group during the 1990s all the way up into the early 2000s, is a gentleman who actually almost had a movie that was based around him joining Judas Priest. In fact, if you talk to some members of the film crew, you'd say that it is about his life, but they over-dramatize things to the point where Tim "Ripper" Owens is extremely distraught about the result and said that if he could have sued them, he would have. So whenever you think about Rockstar and you think about the film about a guy who sings in a tribute band, a cover band, that eventually gets the opportunity to front the band that he is covering songs of, it does a little bit scream Tim "Ripper" Owens. He was in a Judas Priest cover band prior to joining the band, as well as also being in Winter's Bane. But based off of this, there were a couple of things that were kind of wrong that caused the drama of the movie to actually, destroy the actual facts. Rob Halford had been gone for roughly about a year by the time that Ripper Owens had joined the band, as opposed to in the movie where the move was instantaneous, where essentially Mark Wahlberg's character comes in, delivers the audition, and bada bing, bada boom, he's the realest guy in the room, how you doing? So then you take a look at the way in which the whole entire movie sort of plays out with the, fame and fortune. Everything has basically been over-dramatized to the point where it doesn't seem to bear any sort of resemblance toward Ripper Owens. However, Tim was in fact the influence and the inspiration behind Rockstar. Amazing, isn't it? Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. 5 things that you may not have known about Judas Priest, but you know about them now, which means the next time you go to a party, you can blurt out one of these factoids and watch the rest of your friends just look at you like you're nuts. I'm coverkillernation. If there's any other strange facts that you think were not left, or were actually not placed in this list, or left out of the list, let me know in the comments below. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.